Okay, I'm going to be doing a review on all the fine gauge CinDwood looms. First, I'm going to start off with my small ones, and as you can see, I have a lot. Some were prototypes when we were trying to get things started, but overall they're actually really nice looms for fine gauge. So let me kind of go over what sizes they have and everything. So you'll see that these are 1/4 inch gauge and this is a 3/8 inch gauge. So you can kind of see the difference in the spacing between the pegs. Now if you go on to the Facebook page that CinDwood has, you'll find that a lot of people are really preferring the 3/8 inch gauge, particularly in the larger looms. I have several 3/8 inch gauge looms, and these are the ones that most people are finding they prefer over the 1/4 inch gauge, and I honestly like it really nice for that because the projects will take a little longer. That's the problem with fine gauge, they will take a little longer. But the 3/8 inch doesn't seem to take quite as long, and you can use worsted to a DK size, which this is a size 3 yarn that I'm using here. It's a baby yarn, and you can see as it's E-wrapped how nicely it works up, and this is going to eventually turn into a doll blanket. So I've only got a quarter of the circle. I've got quite a bit more to do, but as you can see, this is kind of what it works up on the 3/8 when you do just a simple E-wrap. But the 3/8 is nice, and the sizes they come in will vary. For some reason, where are my 3/8? I've tried to get them color coded. Okay. And they do tend to come in the blue or the pink. And I typically like to order my 3/8 in blue and my 1/4 inch gauge in the pink, so that it's easier for me to differentiate which one I'm picking up. But because some of the larger ones like this were early on before they came out with the blue pegs, I have a couple that are like this that have the pink pegs that are 3/8 inch. But this is one of the larger ones for the 3/8 inch gauge. So I'm going to kind of tell you what kind of peg count you've got. This is the 80 peg 3/8 inch gauge, and this is basically a adult hat, a large adult hat loom. Okay, and so this is the largest loom size in the 3/8 that they have so far, and I've used it some. I like these pegs. They're going to be a little rougher than their standard pegs because of what they're made out of, but I will tell you that these pegs are flexible. They are wonderfully flexible. They're going to be near impossible to break. So when it comes to the fine gauge looms in the CinDwood, they're still an excellent quality. The pegs are going to be very difficult to go in and break. You can bend them, and they'll usually spring back. If they don't, you can usually bend them back into place. I've had to do that with a couple, but honestly, the pegs are they are a little rougher, but they have the flexibility that's really nice. And CinDwood started using a newer glue. So you're going to find that there's going to be a clear white glue that's going to be showing up. This was done with the older, but I will also tell you that in general, the fine gauge pegs, I find in general, have been holding up really well with both the glues they've used. So these pegs don't come out easy, but if you have a problem and the peg comes out, you can usually Gorilla Glue it and it goes back in fine. These are really solidly in there pegs. And also the great news is if you break one, you can contact them and they can send you some replacement pegs for your fine gauge. But I have yet to break a peg off my fine gauge, and I have a 2-year-old that runs around. So these are really nice quality fine gauge looms. And the plus side is you're not going to find a whole lot on the market. They're going to be circular based like this, and that are in fine gauge. And that's really where I believe CinDwood has a up on the market. There's really not that many looms out there that are circular. And for me, I personally absolutely love the circular looms. I hate rectangular looms. Breaks up my flow. I love the circular looms, so I'm really enjoying the fine gauge, particularly the 3/8, because it is you can use the finer yarns and still get things done in a moderate amount of time. And I kind of like to do speedy projects, but the 3/8 are good. So this is the largest they have, and it's the 80 peg 3/8. Okay, and the next one down, which is going to be a small adult to say a teenager or an older child, and this is the 72 peg 3/8. And as you can see, I've been working on it with a slouchy, and that's the next one down. The next one down from there, which is going to be child, is 60 pegs, and it's 3/8 inch gauge. Okay, and that's the next size down, and that's for basically a child if you're e-wrapping. If you want to do a baby hat in a flat knit, this is kind of the size you're going to get if you're using like a DK yarn. So it's going to be smaller when you look at that. But if you're e-wrapping, it's definitely going to work for like a toddler to like a 4 or 5-year-old. Okay, and if you're wanting to make a baby hat, I would suggest this one, and this one is the 54 peg 3/8 inch gauge. And this one I have done a baby hat with and everything, and I think this is a good loom to do a baby hat on. So that's kind of the hat looms that they've got right now that are in the 3/8 inch. Then you start going down to smaller sizes. Okay, this one's a prototype, but you can get it where it doesn't have the holes in the bottom and it's evenly done. But this is the first 3/8 inch gauge they put out in it, and they call it a sock loom. Okay, and it's a 40 peg 3/8 inch gauge. You can make socks out of this. This is their largest they have in the sock realm. Okay, in the 3/8 inch gauge. And I find that you'll find that I've done a pattern book based off of this loom and the knitted knockers, which is a 4th inch gauge 56 peg. I have taken these two looms and done a whole book on gloves, socks, the real basic stuff for smaller. And when it comes to the socks and gloves, I actually prefer the 4th inch gauge. You can use some really fine yarns with it, and it's really good for socks and gloves and that kind of thing. But I've used, these are the 3 smaller sizes that they have in the 3/8 inch gauge. I have made gloves and I have made socks on this, which is the 40 peg 3/8, as they call this the sock loom. Okay, and that's the next size down. And then you have one that's supposed to be for what I consider smaller adult feet to probably adolescent, and it's a 36 peg 3/8. I have done a pattern for a stuffed animal on this one, and it's because it is closer together, it makes for a nice loom to do things like stuffed animals and stuff like that on. I've actually done a lace bonnet that uses up about this many pegs. So this one's nice for smaller socks, for a smaller to adolescent, small adult to adolescent. So that's what that one's good for. And this is the next smallest, which can make baby socks. And here is an example of a baby sock done on this one. But I've also found that this one, which is the 20 peg 3/8, is going to be great for appliques. And right now I'm working on getting at least 10 designs for appliques out. It's I've kind of taken a break on it, but I have plans to do many applique designs on this loom. It's almost like the 12 peg loom that you can get with the Nifty Knitter. So you could do flowers and everything. This is a small enough loom to do really nice stuff like that, to do flowers, to do appliques, to do, you can do the baby socks with the thicker yarn. This is a worsted yarn, and I've even been known to use at least a size 5 yarn if it's thinner and closer to worsted. So those are actually all the 3/8 inch gauge looms that they have. So that is the 3/8 inch gauges. Now I'm going to kind of go over the 1/4 inch gauge. Okay, and I don't have the largest one they have, which is the equivalent of the size of the 80. I don't have it in front of me. It's got a larger project on it. It's 120 pegs, and it's definitely for adult. This one, which is the equivalent to the 72, is 110 pegs for the 1/4 inch gauge, and it's also meant for smaller adult to, I would say, adolescent. You can use some really fine yarn with these, but I will tell you that projects are going to take much longer with the larger the loom, the longer the project's going to take to do a hat and that kind of thing. But the great thing about these hat looms that have the 1/4 inch, you can also do some really nice intricate color work. I've seen some of the designers go in and do some beautiful color work stuff on the CinDwood page. I haven't done much color work with it. I've done a little bit of lacing and that kind of thing, but I don't have as much preference for the 1/4 inch gauge because I'm kind of a speedy designer. I like to go in and make things and have it come out really quickly. But if you love the pure time and joy of it, get you the 1/4 inch gauge. They're really nice looms. But that is the next size down. And the 90 is the next size, and then 80 is the next size, and these are all 1/4. What I have found, if you use a fine yarn on the 80 peg, and then you take the 80 peg and the 3/8, and you use a worsted yarn, the sizes will come out different. I also find that you can translate, if somebody has written the say the 80 peg and the 3/8, like a hat, and you'd like to make a smaller version for like a baby, which this would be like toddler size here, it's easy. You just do the exact same thing. You're just working on the 1/4 inch gauge. So it's interchangeable. If you find a pattern that has the I think they have it in 60, 80 is where it's similar. I know the 60 and 80, and then there's the 30, and then there's 36. So you can interchange those quite a bit. Even with the larger gauges going down to a 3/8 inch gauge, if you're wanting to change the size up and you have the loom with the same number of pegs, but you don't want to go in and do all the math and subtract everything, and you just want to use a finer yarn, it actually translates really easily to just change over to a finer gauge. So, but this one is basically a child to toddler size, 80 peg 1/4 inch. No, actually that's the baby. The 90. The 90 is actually the child to toddler size in the 1/4 inch. The 80 is the baby size, so the 80 and the 1/4 inch. And that you can do some nice lace work with that, because you can work with some really thin yarns with a 1/4 inch. Now we're moving into the smaller ones, which I absolutely prefer the smaller ones for socks and gloves and that kind of thing, because you don't want too much bulk around your feet, your hands, that kind of thing. So I really prefer the 1/4 inch gauge when it comes to doing socks. Okay. Now they have a newest one, which is the 60 peg 1/4 inch gauge. It's actually a true 1/4 inch. The 56 peg 1/4 inch gauge isn't quite a true. It's the knitted knockers. And the book I have is written in this one, but I'm going to be working on doing a small booklet on how you can do gloves on the 60, the 50, which is this one, and how to do some toddler gloves on the 30 peg. So what that means is you can make this as socks. These two, it's a 4 peg difference, and basically you're going to make a large adult sock with it, is what you can use it for. So for any men's socks or anything like that, to a larger foot for a woman, you can use these. These are good for socks on those. So those are the ones that I would suggest for adult socks. The 50 peg is for smaller feet, so for adolescent to small adult. If you're going to do socks or anything like that, yeah, you can do adult gloves with this one, but most people are buying them to do socks. And so for this one, if you're wanting to make socks, I would suggest that this one is smaller adult to adolescent. And this is the smallest one they have in the 1/4 inch gauge, and it's a 30 peg. Okay. And I have made socks with it. And I'm going to be making mittens, and I'm going to be making a little miniature kind of amigurumi stuffed animal. And so it's going to be really great for finding your yarns to do that with. And so what I'll do is go in and show you first examples of stuff I've made with 3/8 inch gauge, and then show you examples of stuff I've made with the 1/4 inch gauge. And you can kind of see for yourself how that looks, what the difference is. Typically, you're not going to want to E-wrap with the 1/4 inch. You can. It's going to be more tedious. And you may can find one of those things that'll spin it around that's small enough for that. But E-wrap's going to be more difficult on the 1/4 inch. Typically, you're going to be doing either a U-wrap, a traditional knit, or a flat knit with the 1/4 inch gauge. I'm letting you in on that one. That's generally what's going to be coming around with that. So, and that will kind of make things smaller, because it's being flat knit typically. But I will show you some examples of the 3/8 inch gauge and the 1/4 inch gauge of stuff that I've made with these looms, so that you kind of have an idea. But they're excellent quality. They have flexible pegs. I have yet to have one come out on me with the glues they're using. The pegs are a little rougher, but it's because they have more flexibility, and there's I believe she said there's like a little bit of glass in them to help them be flexible. But they're really nice looms. They're good, high quality, and CinDwood is kind of one up on the market in the fact that they have circular fine gauge looms. It's not real common. There's not a whole lot of the super fine gauge like this, the 1/4 inch gauge. But I'm finding that most people tend to prefer the 3/8 inch gauge because they're a little faster to work up on things, and your average yarn you get is a size 4 worsted, and so it works up really great with worsted yarn. But that is my review on the CinDwood fine gauge.